Hello my scholars, welcome to my school YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel. In today's video we'll be tackling JAMB CBT past question for biology in the year 2005. Please don't go anywhere, stick around and we'll be right back. You're welcome back to my school YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be tackling question 1 to 25. Now let's get down to question number 1. The organelle common to both plant and animal cells is the what? We have the centrioles, we have the plasmalemma, we have cell wall, we have chloroplast. Let's take it from chloroplast. Chloroplast, usually we know that it's what contains, is the organelle that contains the chloroplast, the chlorophyll that the plant uses in making or manufacturing their food. So which means it can be found in plant cells only, not in animal cells. Okay, option C says cell wall. Cell wall is just like an outer layer, okay, that separates the interior of the cell, okay, to the outside environment. So in most cases, in fact, cell wall is not regarded to be one of the organelles of the plant, although it is only found in plant cells, so you can't find them in animal cells as well. So on those two facts, it is not an organelle that is common to both plants and animal. Option C, B says plasmalemma. Plasmalemma is another name that the cell membrane or plasma membrane is called, okay? And then plasma membrane also, or cell membrane, is not regarded as an organelle because it is just the boundary, okay, between the inside of the cell, the organelles of the cell, and the outside environment, just like the cell wall. The cell wall is outside, covers the cell membrane, the plasma membrane, okay? So the plasma membrane regulates materials that come in and out of the cell. So it is not an organelle as well. Then centrioles. Centrioles, yes, we know that centrioles is useful in cell division. It plays a very crucial role in cell division, separating the fibers, okay, of the chromosomes, okay, in cell division. So it plays we have them common mostly in animals. In animal cells you can have them. We don't have them much in higher plants, but because we have them in lower plants, okay, so we can say that it's common in both plant and animal. If you look at all of these options now, this one is not an organelle and it's also common, it's only found in plant cells. This are found in plant cell, this one are not regarded as, this would have been the answer because we can find it both in plants and animal, but because it is not regarded as an organelle, so you can't go for this because it says the organelle common to this. So plasmalemma, which is cell membrane, though common to both plant and animal cells, but it is not. Cell membrane is not regarded as an organelle. So for that reason, this is not. So among these options now, centrioles appear to be the best option. So we go for the correct answer, which is option A, centrioles. Now let's move on to question number 2. Which of the following is likely to have a higher concentration of the mitochondria? You agree with me that mitochondria, or if you recall, that mitochondria is actually referred to as the organelle that is called the powerhouses of the cell. Powerhouses because it generates energy, okay, in form of ATP that is required by living cells, okay, to carry out their life. Now if you look at all of these options, option A says sperm cell, we have white blood cell, egg cell, red blood cell. So the organelle that is likely to have a higher concentration of the mitochondria is no other one among these than the plant cell. The reason being that plant cell requires a lot of energy to be able to move, okay? You know, when we talk about sperm cell is actually responsible, okay, for fertilization of the egg cell, okay, to form fetus and then offspring during the reproduction stage. So the sperm cell is going to travel a longer distance, okay, for it to get to where the ovary, where the egg cell is. So it requires a lot of energy to be able to what? To drive, to move. So we talk about motility of the egg cell. That's why you discover that during a test we call sperm analysis, okay, or we call semen analysis, okay, we check for what? Motility. How active is the sperm cell for it to be able to what? To move. If the sperm cell are weak, it becomes so difficult for them. They don't have energy to move to where the site where the egg cell is to fertilize it. So it's going to take a longer time, even though the white blood cells helps in defense, fighting diseases. Yes, they require energy. The egg cell does that. The red blood cells also require what? Moving to get what? The hemoglobin to have it. And all of them actually require, but the question is which of them likely to have the higher, concentration. So the one that requires enough energy or more energy, or that we have higher concentration of mitochondria, is the one that actually requires a lot of energy to be able to do what? To carry out its metabolic activity. So among them here, sperm cell happens to be the one that has the higher concentration of mitochondria for energy, for motility. Okay, so based on that, the correct answer is option A. Now let's move on to question number 3. The hyphal wall of fungi is rigid owing to the what? Why do we have the fungal wall having the hyphal wall of fungi rigid? It is rigid because it contains what we call chitin. Chitin, option D is we say option A is cell wall, lignin, we have cellulose and chitin. Chitin is actually what is responsible for the what? For the rigidity of the hyphal wall of the fungi, because it helps in building the structural framework, of the plant. Just like we have glucan together with protein, so the chitin actually works together with glucan, and then with protein to form the framework of the fungi, among them. So it's responsible for the strength, the rigidity of the particular wall of the fungi, the hyphal wall of the fungi. So it's not cell wall, it's not lignin, it's not cellulose. So the correct answer is chitin. Option D is the correct answer. On to question number 4. Angiosperms and gymnosperms belong to the class what? When we talk about angiosperms and gymnosperms, don't forget we have complexity in advancement, advancement of the plant kingdoms. Usually we start from thallophytes. Thallophytes are the least. Then we talk about pteridophyta. Then we talk about bryophyta. Then we talk about angiosperm, we talk about gymnosperm, then finally we talk about angiosperm. Angiosperm are the most complex, when you talk to complexity, advanced, in that, because they are fast. So both angiosperms and gymnosperms actually belong to the class spermatophyta. I will explain why. Now when we talk about angiosperms have differentiated bodies together with gymnosperms. Both of them also have vascular bundles. Apart from that, both of them also bear fruits, and then they are seed-bearing fruits. So, and because they bear seeds in their fruits, in their reproductive structures, we refer to them as spermatophytes. In other words, spermatophyta is a kind of class, that is made up of plants that bear seeds. So we call them seed-bearing plants. So among all of those ones I talked about, thallophytes, pteridophyte, bryophyte, angiosperm, and these two only are the ones that bear seeds, in their fruit. Yes, usually we refer to angiosperms as flowering plants, flowering plants, while the gymnosperms usually they bear seeds. This one bears seeds, and the seeds they bear usually are enclosed in the fruits, while this one they have naked seeds. The gymnosperms have the naked seeds. So both of them actually make up the class that we call seed-bearing plants, also known as spermatophyta. So among all of these options now, we have schizophyta, we have spermatophyta, we have pteridophyta, we have bryophyta. Bryophyta, you'll be talking about moths and leeching, we'll be talking about pteridophyta, we have the fen, and so on, spermatophyta. So the correct answer among all of this one is actually option B, spermatophyta. Let's move on to question number 5. An example of radially symmetric organism is what? We have Planera, we have Hydra, we have tapeworm, we have roundworm. Even though both of these are worms, Hydra, Planera. So among all of these options now, the one that has radially symmetrical body, type is the Hydra. Hydra, we know it has 2 tentacles, it has the mouth part, it has the the basal, so it has the basal foot. So because of the features it has, you can be able to divide the Hydra into 2 equal halves, around any axis, passing toward the central axis, from whichever part you try to cut it, you try to divide it, it will give you 2 equal halves. That's why we refer to it as what? Radially what? Symmetrical, You can look at radially symmetrical as the spoke, of a wheel, You see the wheel of a bicycle. from the center, you have different spokes like that, okay, around them like that. So that is how you can be able to refer to, or you can liken a radially symmetrical organism into. So the Hydra is such one. So among this option now, the correct answer is option B, Hydra. Let's move on to question number 6. The leech and the earthworm belong to the what? We have the mollusks, we have the crustaceans, we have the arachnids, we have the annelids. When we talk about the mollusks, we talk about the snails, okay? That's where the snails actually fall in. We have the snails and other organisms that fall in under that. So if you look at this now, usually when we talk about leech and the earthworm, okay, leech usually have what we refer to as segmented body, okay, just like the earthworm also, they have different segments, okay, but the leech is just, we have the dark one, we have the red one. They are usually found in swampy areas, okay, where suck their host blood, especially if there has been a wound, okay, on your leg. When you get into the water, the swamp area, the freshwater area, you can find the leech there, okay. That once it sticks to because it has two parts where it can stick, okay, to your body. It's a wall, and then begins to suck the blood of the organism gradually, especially if it is human, okay. It gets stuck there. In fact, the way it is so stuck, it is difficult for you to remove it with your hand. So you might need something that is smooth, like a cutlass, okay, maybe the back part of the cutlass, the part that is blunt, you use it to remove it from the body, because once it sticks like that, it's just there, it begins to suck blood, and then it even can be there and be causing So that is how the leech looks like, and earthworm also. Let's look at the diagram of the leech and the earthworm for better understanding. So you can see now, this is the earthworm. Of course, maybe if you have dug the ground before, do the swampy area, the moistened area, you will find so many of them there, okay. That's the earthworm. They have segmented body. And then if you look at the leech, okay, this is the leech here, okay. This, you can have some of them dark, then the skin is always shiny like this. It has segmented body. So that is usually referred to as, those organisms that have segmented bodies like that are referred to as the annelids, okay. You say they are in the phylum what? Annelida, okay. So let's go back to our option so we can choose the correct answer. Okay, so we can see here that from what we just saw diagram down, that the leech and the earthworm belong to the Annelida phylum, which are what? So they are called what? Annelids. So option, they are not arachnids. Arachnids are just like your spider, your scorpions, they are arachnids. Crustaceans, just like your prawn, your crabs, those are crustaceans. They are not just like that. Then the mollusks, we talk about the snails, and so forth. So among all of these options now, the leech and the earthworm belong to the annelids. The correct answer is option D. Question 7. Ratus, agama, Bufo regularis, and then Tilapia zili. Of course, these are scientific names of those animals. When we talk, of course, ratus, the way it sounds, it is rat. Okay, so that's a black rat. Then we have agama, your agama lizard. Okay, the red-headed lizard. Then we have the Bufo regularis, that is your African toad. Okay, we have then the fifth one, Tilapia zili. As the name implies, tilapia just sounds like what? Tilapia. Okay, fish. So we have that here. So this one is even though it is red, very tilapia, it is the tilapia. So the order of evolutionary advancement to the above vertebrates is what? They are all vertebrates, okay, because they all have what? Backbones. So we have them. How do we arrange them? Now there's an order of evolutionary advancement. How they were able to advance from which is the preliminary, which one is the least, okay, to the most advanced. Of course, you know that mammals, okay, are the most advanced among all of this. But which is the least? Usually it starts from the jawless bone. Let's look at the board, okay. The order of evolutionary advancement in vertebrates actually takes this order. We have the jawless fish. It starts with the jawless fish, that's the least. Then we have the bony fish, okay. It's evolutionary. It is advanced to what? To bony fish. Then this one, the bony fish is what? Advanced. The advanced level is what? The amphibians, okay, like we talk about the tetrapods, okay. And then we have the reptiles. From this, we have the reptiles. From reptiles, we have the birds, okay. These are advanced to what? The birds, and the birds eventually to what? To the mammals. So mammals are the most advanced. So if you look at the options we're given, we have Roman figure 1, we have ratus, we have agama, Bufo regularis, and Tilapia zili. Okay, so jawless fish. Among those options now, we don't have any jawless fish there. Okay, so let's look at the other one. We have bony fish. Do we have bony fish? Yes, we have the tilapia zili. Tilapia zili is actually what? Your tilapia, okay? That is what is tilapia zili. So we start from that. That is Roman figure 4. So this is Roman figure 4 here. So I will just state that here. Roman figure 4, because we want to arrange them in order. Okay, Roman figure 4, that's where your tilapia zili is. Zili falls. Okay, then we have after that we have amphibians. Do we have any amphibians there? We have ratus, we have gamma, we have buffo. Okay, amphibians, of course, they are organisms that actually live in both land, or live on both land and then on water. So we have buffo regularis. Okay, that should be our amphibians. Buffo regularis. So that is Roman figure 3. Okay, that is your African toad. Like I said, you know, they live in water and also on land. Then we have the reptiles. Do we have any reptiles there? Yes, they have skin, and then they live on, this is called, that is agama. Okay, which is our what? Our red-headed lizard. So agama falls in there. So, and that is Roman figure 2. Okay, so we have Roman figure 2. And then the last one we have there is ratus. Of course, no ratus, that's your black rats. Okay, they give birth to their young ones alive, and then they don't lay eggs, so they are form of mammals. Okay, so, and that is Roman figure 1. So that is where it falls. So we have this, and this. We don't have any birds there. So the order is 4, 3, 2, and 1. So let's go back to the screen and see the option that has that. Okay, Roman figure is option A says 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1 for that. We have 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. So the order of evolutionary advancement to the above vertebrates is 4, 3, 2, 1. So the correct answer is option D. Let's move on to question number 8. We have a diagram here. From the diagram above, the angle between the parts labeled 2 and 3 is the what? Of course, this is a plant. Okay, you can see that it's just growing. We have the roots here. Okay, you can tell what. At least let's get the diagram so that we can understand. It's saying that the angle between 2 and 3. Here is 2, here is 3. So it's saying that the angle here is called what? Okay, it's called what? I know what it is, but let's look at the clear diagram so that we can understand it better. So this is a better diagram that is labeled. Now we have this stipple. Okay, at this part you have the bud going in between. Okay, the two stems. Okay, we have the node here outside of the leaf. Okay, then we have the midrib. That is at that point. I don't know. Then we have the internode. Internode is the distance between two nodes. The node here and the node here. Okay, where we have a leaf here and then we have the node going out here. So the distance between them is where we call the internode. Then we have the node here. At this point we have the petiole, we have blade, and then we have the axial. The angle between the leaf, okay, that's the stem, the leaf and then the stem itself, this angle here is what we refer to as axial. So from that question, they asked us that the distance, the angle between 2, okay, this is 2 and 3 is actually called what? Okay, we have a node and so on. So you can see here that what that is what axial. The axial is the angle between. So let's go back to our option so we can select the correct answer. So from the diagram above, the angle between the parts labeled 2, this is 2, this part, and 3. So the angle between them, which is this point now, is referred to as what? Axial. We just saw that now. Not but, not no, not internode, it's axial. So the correct answer is option D. Question 9. We have the same diagram just from what we just did. The part of the plant where photosynthesis is least likely to take place is what? You know, when we talk about photosynthesis, the process through which green plants manufacture their food, making use of carbon dioxide and water to produce food, and energy is given up. So which means that chlorophyll is required for it in the presence of what? Sunlight. Now the sunlight that is being trapped is needed by the what? By the parts that usually will give up, that has chloroplast or the chlorophyll present in it, that is exposed to sunlight. Okay, so if you look at all of this one, Roman figure 1, you can have that exposed to sunlight. It is but if you look at all of these ones are above the ground. The root, Roman figure 4, is actually what? Underground. Okay, so it's not going to be exposed directly to the sunlight for photosynthesis to what? To take place. Okay, so it says that the part of the plant where photosynthesis is least likely to take place. Of course, it is this one that is what? Underneath the ground. It will get to all of these ones first, sunlight, okay, before it can get to this point, okay, before we can have that. And then when we talk about CO2, you can have CO2, which is air to can get in contact with this one first before this. So this one happens to be the part that is what least going to be what likely to where photosynthesis is likely to the periglyph go for. So the correct answer here is option D. Do you know you can take practice questions on our simulated JAMB CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to download the Myschool mobile app for your Androids and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now let's move on to question number 10. The stage in the life history of the moth responsible for the destruction of agricultural crops is the one we refer to it as economic importance of that particular organism, okay? The responsible for destruction of agricultural crops is the what we have the name, we have imago, we have the pupa. Of course, these are stages, okay, that are present in what? In insects. We have the caterpillar, okay? Caterpillar, of course, we are familiar with that the caterpillar usually will feed on the leaves, okay, of the plant, okay? We eat it off, we feed on the stem, okay, of the plant, we feed on the fruits of the plant, even go down to the, so it is the one among this one. This is the stage. The caterpillar is the stage, of course, we call it the larva stage, okay, of the insect. So it's the one that has power to begin to what? It feeds on the leaf, on the stem, on the every part of the plant. It can destroy those agricultural products, even the food that you intend to do. So it is the caterpillar that is the stage in the life history of the moth, okay, that is responsible for destruction of crops and of plants. So the correct answer is option D, caterpillar. I believe you are enjoying this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video. Question number 11. The black fly is a vector of what? Vector is the organism that actually carries, the disease-causing organisms, okay, usually. The black fly, like we have the mosquito, option A is malaria. We know that mosquito, the Anopheles mosquito, infected Anopheles mosquito, okay, is actually responsible. So it's the vector. So the vector for malaria is actually mosquito, okay, not black fly. Option B says trypanosomiasis. Trypanosomiasis is said to be the sleeping sickness, okay. When you get bitten by tsetse fly can call it that is infected with bitten, and then the organism or the animal, usually you find them in the northern part of the country where we have cattle being reared, all of that. So trypanosomiasis is actually caused by tsetse fly, okay, not the black fly, okay. So option B is not correct. Option B says onchocerciasis. Onchocerciasis. You have to watch the way you pronounce that, okay. So that is actually caused by black fly. Black fly is the vector that is responsible for that, for this particular sickness, okay, disease. It is caused by the black fly. And option D says yellow fever. Yellow fever is also caused by mosquito, especially no Anopheles mosquito now, okay, but it's also caused by mosquito. So mosquito is the vector for yellow fever, malaria also, and then trypanosomiasis, tsetse fly. So the only one here is onchocerciasis. That is what black fly is, what is responsible for that. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 12. The transition from amphibians to mammals involves the limb becoming arranged to support the weight more effectively, requiring modifications in the what? Now don't forget we are looking at what? Amphibians to mammals. How they were able to transmit. We call that the evolutionary transition, okay. The transition from amphibians to mammals involves the limb. When we talk about the limb, we are talking about this and then the legs, okay. We have the hands, okay, and the legs. Then if you look at amphibians, the way they were, actually those ones that live in the water. So amphibians, remember, are organisms that live in water and also on land. So as they live in the water, okay, for long, they come to the land. When they come to the land, what happens? They begin to develop features of their limbs that will help them survive, to be able to live on land for a longer time. So as they stay over the years, for many years, their limbs began to change, okay, transform from one form, transit from what it used to be, because on the land they don't need to swim, they don't need to walk, with the swim in the water just like it's on land. So they require a more advanced limb, okay, to help them carry. And that is why as they transit from amphibians, gradually transmit into what? Into mammals, okay, gradually with the what? With the way their limbs are actually formed. And out of all of this option, the question says the modification is in the collarbones. When we talk about the limb, we are talking about this, and there's no way you talk about this without talking about this aspect, okay, and then this other aspect, the hip area, where the limb that carries the weight of the limb. So we talk about this aspect, okay, that is what actually where the skeleton, of course, if you look at the skeleton of human, that is the part where we have the joints, where the shoulder blade is actually, and at the part we call that scapula, okay, we have the scapula at that point. So that actually make up what we call the pectoral girdle, okay, pectoral girdle. And then the one at this point that carries the weight of the entire body, okay, of the organism is actually what we call the pelvic. So we talk about the pectoral, we talk about the pelvic girdle actually that helps to carry the weight of the organism, okay, the entire weight of the organism. So option A says collarbones and coccyx. Option B says pectoral and pelvic girdles. Option C says scapula and clavicles. Scapula and clavicles is only responsible for this aspect, okay, the shoulder blade, but not for this. So this is one-sided. Both the scapula and the clavicles actually make up the pectoral, okay, but how about the pelvic girdle, the one that carries the entire weight, okay, from the leg, from this point, that carries the weight of the hip, right? So this one is not encompassing the option. This is vertebrae and sternum, so this does not. So among all of these options now, the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdles actually are more effectively requiring modifications in the what? In the pectoral aspect, okay, and then you can look at the crocodile, how the crocodile looks like, okay, living in water and living on land at that point. So if it does not modify the pectoral, okay, this aspect now, it would not be able to walk freely on the land. So the aspect that is actually modified, more effectively requiring modification when they are transmitted, when amphibians are transmitted to mammals, involves the limb that are the pectoral and the pelvic girdle. So the correct answer is actually option B. Question number 13. The main function of the caudal fish in tilapia is to what? When we talk about caudal fish is just behind, okay, the tail. We also call it the tail, fin, okay, at the tail of it. When you see the tilapia, what it does is to help it to propel forward when it wants to swim, okay. Don't forget we have the pectoral, we have the pelvic, we have the dorsal at the back of it, okay, we have the dorsal, then we have those ones by the side also. It's talking about the main function of the caudal fin. Yes, it can also help in steering, okay, while changing direction. It can also help in, but for the balancing, we talk about the pectoral. They are the one that are beside, okay, the tilapia fish. They are just beside it. We have the other one directly after the gill, where we have the gill, okay, the operculum, we have it at the other side. We have it on the two sides of the fish. So that one is to maintain what? To maintain balance. But when we talk about the caudal fin, that's the tail one, is actually to propel forward. When it wants to propel forward, it swings it and then the fish moves forward. Just like the paddle in the canoe, okay? When you want to move forward, you move it there. So option A says propel it forward in water. Yes, that is the major function. Option B says steer it while changing direction, okay. We have it can use the dorsal fin for that, okay, and then we have the side fins also. The pectoral also can be used. Then option C says balance in the water. I've said that, and then enable it to float in water. So, well, the caudal fin can also carry out this function, but the main function is to propel the fish forward while it is in the water. So the correct answer is option A. Let's move on to question number 14. In the root vascular system, the stele, this is stele. The stele is directly surrounded by the what? In the root vascular system, the stele is directly surrounded by the what? Pericycle, cortex, endodermis, and pericardium. Let's look at the diagram, label diagram, to explain this and to choose the best answer. So you can see here we have this is the different regions where we can have in the plant. Let's say the stem, okay, of a tree, of a plant that is cut off. Because when we talk about vascular development, we're talking about the vascular bundles, and usually those are the xylem and the phloem. Okay, usually that we have that where transportation of minerals, of water, of nutrients are moved from one part of the plant to the other. So we have our area of concentration is actually here. So you can see here a part of this was just cut off, okay, to represented here so that you can see it clearly. So we have the primary tissues, which are the epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, phloem, and so on and so forth. So this is the stele here. You can see the stele here. This aspect is the stele. Okay, we have the stele here. This part here, you can see it that is round this way. That is the stele. Okay, so it is said it is surrounded by what? Immediately after what? Which is this. This is what surrounds it. Okay, this is what surrounds the stele. So what is the name of that? This is this part. So you trace it down. That is the part. That is the endodermis. So the endodermis is actually that covers. Okay, that surrounds what? The stele, which is what? The vascular cylinder. The stele is also called the vascular cylinder. So let's go back to the option so that we can select the correct answer. So when you look at the vascular system of that root, okay, the plant of the plant now, like what we saw there, we said that it is directly surrounded. That means immediately after the stele, it is surrounded by what? It was the endodermis when we saw that. So it is not pericycle, not cortex, endodermis, yes, not parenchyma. So the correct answer is option C, endodermis. Question 15. We have a diagram here. Of course, if you look at it very well, you should be familiar with this. We have this part, of course, that's your liver. You can see that, that is your liver. Then we have, okay, that's the part labeled high. Then we have, this is your gallbladder. Gallbladder, you can find that here. Then we have this, the stomach here. Okay, we have the duodenum, yes. We have this, the duodenum here at this part here. This part is the duodenum, okay. That is the first part of the small intestine where digestion and reabsorption of food is actually taking place. So the question says from the diagram above, the part labeled 4 represents the what? We have option A says colon, option B says ileum, option C says cecum, and then option D says duodenum, okay, which is Roman figure 4. So this is Roman figure 4, like I just said, this is your duodenum, okay, part of the small intestine. So Roman figure 4 is duodenum. So the correct answer is option D. Now on to question number 16. The same diagram we just dealt with. It says from the diagram above, the bile is stored in the part labeled what? Bile usually is produced in the liver, okay, but is stored in the what? In the gallbladder. So gallbladder is the part, okay, of the human, of the organism where the bile is stored. Remember, bile is produced in the liver, but it is stored in the gallbladder. So option A says Roman figure 1, of course that is your liver, that is not where it is. If it were where it is being produced, option Roman figure 1 would have been the answer. The Roman figure 2, this is the what? The gallbladder. You can see it there. We said that before. And then this is your pancreas. Okay, that's not what is required. And this is your what? Duodenum. Okay, so the actual answer is this part, gallbladder. This is where gallbladder is stored in the this is where bile is stored in the gallbladder. So which is Roman figure 2. So let's look at the option. Roman figure 2 happens to be B. So the correct answer is option B. Question number 17. The only vein that carries pure oxygenated blood is the what? Usually, oxygenated blood is supposed to be carried, or deoxygenated blood. That means oxygen that does not contain oxygen, or that is not rich in oxygen. Deoxygenated blood are carried by the veins, okay? But there is an exception to a kind of vein. We call it pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. From the lungs to the heart. So it has an exception. So there's a rule that all veins must carry what? Oxygenated what? Blood. Deoxygenated blood. Okay? But there is an exception to that rule, which is the pulmonary vein. So the pulmonary vein, usually, they transport, they contain veins, okay, that carries blood that is contained or that is rich in oxygen. That's why we call it oxygenated blood. Pure oxygenated blood from the lungs, usually, to the heart. So not renal vein, not hepatic vein, not sciatic vein, but pulmonary vein. So the correct answer is option B. pulmonary vein. Question number 18. The function of the fluid-filled pericardium is the what? Is to what? Option A says reduce the friction caused by. Now, usually when we have the fluid-filled pericardium is found as layers around the heart. So, like a protective layer, kind of air-filled. It is fluid-filled. It is filled with fluid. Okay? Now, what does it do? It helps to protect the heart from outside forces that could be coming outside the heart. It protects like a shield for the heart. And then whenever there is a heartbeat, it tries to reduce the friction level, okay, in the heart. So the fluid-filled pericardium is to what? To reduce the forces that is coming from the outside, okay, to the heart, and then to also try to what? To regulate the friction or reduce the friction that is caused by what? Whenever there is heartbeat that is taking place in the heart. So option A says to reduce the friction caused by the pumping movements of the heart. Yes, when there is heartbeat, it reduces the friction. That is one of the functions of the fluid-filled pericardium. Option B says supply the heart with organisms from attacking what? The heart. No. Option C says prevent disease organism from attacking the heart. That is not it. Option D says reduce the intensity of the pumping. No, it doesn't. It is acting like a protective layer, okay, like a shield, okay, for the heart, so that whenever there is a friction of the heartbeat, the pumping of the what? Of blood in the heartbeat, what happens? It tries to what? Reduce the friction and also to protect the heart from what? From forces outside of the heart. So the correct answer here is option A, reduce the friction caused by the pumping movements of the heart. Let's move on to question number 19. The mammalian lung is made airtight by the what? Of course, you know we have the mammalian lung. The mammals have two types of lungs. Okay, we have one, the right and the left, in between that. So to form a cavity. So we have the mammalian lung is made airtight by the what? There is a thin layer, kind of, okay, that shields both the what? The two lungs that the mammals have, okay, shield them to make them airtight, okay, so that it does not. Let's look at the diagram of the mammalian lung and see how it looks like. Okay, so this is the diagram. You can see this is the human lungs. We have them here. This is one, this is two here. So we have, it says the mammalian part of the lung that actually makes the what? The airtight. Okay, this is the part now that is actually painted blue. You can see it very well. This part that makes it what? To be airtight, to allow for effective breathing, okay? And usually we have it, okay, we have the parietal pleura, that's the pleural membrane, okay? We have the visceral pleura, that is the one, the inner part. Then we have the interpleural space. So the interpleural space is actually between the visceral and then the parietal, flame that we have here. So the airtight part now, that airtight part of the lung is actually referred to as this is called parietal pleura here, that is pleural membrane, okay, and then it causes what we call the cavity. The cavity is what is in between there to make it for what? Effective breathing during what? Exchange of gases, okay, so which is what? Plasma, the pleural membrane. So let's move back to the options so that we can select answer. So the part of the mammalian lung that actually makes up, that is responsible for airtight, okay, so that the tight is the air is tightened. Don't forget, the lungs is the part that is responsible for what? For respiration, okay. So when we want to release the air and then to breathe in and breathe out, contraction is actually what we call the pleural membrane, not cavity. Pleural cavity is the pleural membrane that makes up the hollow, the space that is made up is what we call the pleural cavity, but it's actually the pleural membrane that makes up, not the mucous membrane, not the diaphragm, but the pleural membrane. So the correct answer is option C. Do you have any question bothering your mind at all on all we have done so far? Please feel free to ask. All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to ask your question and solutions will be provided within the shortest period of time. Now let's move on to the question number 20. A test tube containing yeast in glucose solution containing alkaline Pericardium, the bubbles of carbon dioxide produced indicates that the yeast cells are what? Now, when we talk about the yeasts are types of microorganisms, okay, that undergoes fermentation. The presence of sugar with water and yeast, okay, will lead to fermentation process, which is going to lead to the breaking down of that sugar to what? To produce ethanol and what? Carbon dioxide, CO2. That is the fermentation process, okay. It requires a yeast, okay. Yeast is the microorganism, okay, that contains the what? The enzyme that will break down the sugar into ethanol and what? And carbon dioxide. But in that process, yeast can actually do that, because don't forget, it contains what? The glucose solution containing alkaline pyrogallol, okay. In that aspect, the yeast is able to what? To carry out fermentation process, which is what? A form of anaerobic respiration. So a type of respiration where the organism can survive, okay, carry out metabolic activity in the absence of what? Oxygen, okay. So yeast has a tendency to do that. So what happens? The bubbles of the carbon dioxide produced indicates that the yeast cells are actually respiring, okay, through the anaerobic respiration, okay. So we call that in the absence of what? Oxygen. They can respire in the absence of it. That's why you can see the what? The carbon dioxide or the carbon dioxide. Don't forget, yeast are actually microorganisms. So because they are microorganisms that find application in the brewing industry, in baking industries, and so on and so forth. So they tend to what? Carry out anaerobic respiration, okay, and that means that they can respire in the absence of oxygen. Option A says respiring in the absence of oxygen. That is more likely. Option B says liberating oxygen on their own. Nope. Option C says living and consuming oxygen. Option D says being killed by the alcohol produced. They are not killed by the alcohol because they break down the sugar into what? Into alcohol and then carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide that you see is as a result of the respiration of the microorganism, of the yeast, okay, by breaking down in the absence of what? Oxygen. So we call it anaerobic respiration in the process of what? Fermentation. So the correct answer is option A, respiring in the absence of oxygen. Do you have any better explanation or better steps on how to solve some of these questions we have dealt with? Please feel free to share with us. All you need to do is to go to the comment section, indicate the question number and the answer you wish to share with us. Now let's move on to question number 21. The urinary tubules of the kidney function through what? Through osmosis and diffusion, active transport and osmosis, ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption. Yes, active transport and cytoplasmic streaming. Yep, the urinary tubules of the kidney function, usually it is through what? Ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption. Here is why. Now, the urinary tubules, usually you know that the glomerulus, which is present in the kidney, actually is the site where the ultrafiltration of the blood actually starts from. So the journey begins with the glomerulus. Now, what happens? When the blood gets into the glomerulus, okay, it is passing through, but that blood that is coming through the glomerulus actually takes place under pressure. And because there is pressure, there is force to which the blood is passed from the glomerulus to the bile capsule. We find some useful substances like the electrolyte, like glucose, like protein, like urea, okay, actually present, will be forced down the bile capsule. Once it is forced down, don't forget it is the blood that is actually going to be filtered. But because it is under pressure with which that takes place, useful substances, okay, like the electrolyte, the glucose will be forced down the glomerulus, the bile capsule together. Now, while it is there, the bile capsule, it will also need to pass through. It's still undergoing the filtration process. Don't forget. And while it is undergoing the filtration process, what happens? Those filtrates will now form the glomerular filtrate. The filtrate begin to pass through the tubules again. So as it's passing the tubules usually are the renal tubules, are those tiny tubes, okay, that begin to that can carry the blood to pass through. But while it is passing through the blood, what happens? Don't forget the electrolyte is together with it, with the blood that is being filtered. We have the glucose with it. So the body by itself will now selectively reabsorbs, because as it's filtering, those waste, okay, which is the urine, will be filtered out. But those glucose, the electrolyte, the protein, okay, the urea are actually needed by the body. So it's not going to, if it goes out of the body, then there's a problem. That is why the kidney is so important organ that helps in infiltration of the blood. Okay, so as it's filtering, so the body now selectively brings back, tries to record. That's why we call it selective what? Reabsorption. It doesn't bring the urine with it. Okay, the filtrate, not all the filtrate. It is what? The glucose, those electrolytes that are useful will now be what? Will be selectively what? Absorbed, reabsorbed back. Okay, to flow into the what? The bloodstream, while the filtrate eventually is ejected through the urethra, then eventually to the gallbladder, to the bladder, okay, where the urine is what? Is drained, and then eventually down through the urethra, and it is passed out of the body. So the ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption actually takes place in what? By the what? Urinary tubules of the kidney. That is the function of it, and that is what we talk about, what? The glomerulus, and then we talk about the Bowman capsule before we begin to talk about the Henle's capsule, the convoluted tubules, and so on and so forth. So the urinary tubules of the kidney function through what? Through ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption. The correct answer is option C. Question number 22. Excess water in plants is excreted as water vapor and droplets respectively through what processes? If you see, we have two pairs of processes here. We have respiration and glutation, we have transpiration and glutation, we have photosynthesis and glutation, we have glutation and condensation. If you don't know anyone at all, you should know what transpiration is. Okay, transpiration has to do with what? The movement, okay, of excess water, the ejection of excess water, okay, that is present in the plant out of the plant through the stomata, through the leaf of the plant usually. Okay, it comes out in form of what? Water vapor. So the water that is in excess, okay, we have so much water that is moving from the plant, throughout the plant, to the trees, to the to the leaf, to the stem, from the roots up and down. So we have excess water. Those excess water now we need to be what? To be in form of excreted, okay, like excretion. Okay, we have to be ejected out of the plant, and that will always take place through the what? Through the what? The leaves. If you come out from the, you can see then the water vapor, okay, on the leaves, okay, usually because it is in excess, and that process is called transpiration. So if you know that, even if you don't know the definition of other processes, okay, at least if you know one, you can be able to eliminate, or don't forget, you can use the elimination method, which one will not be. So it says excess water in plants is excreted as water vapor. That one is what? Transpiration. And then droplets respectively. So now the excess water that is present in the plants, it can also be ejected out of the plant, or it can be excreted out of the plant in form of droplets, water droplets, okay, that we call glutation. So even, let's assume you don't know what glutation is, okay, but you know what transpiration is. So let's look at the pairs now. It says respectively. So which means the first process must be what? Transpiration, while the other one is, if you don't know that, I just want to, so the option A says respiration and glutation. Respiration, of course, it is not this water vapor, it is what? Transpiration. Option B says transpiration. Yes, we have this. More likely, option B. Let's look at option C. Photosynthesis is coming first. No. Option D, glutation is coming first. No. So which means the one that has transpiration as the first, okay, because that's the excess, the process which excess water in plant is being what? Excreted as water vapor, is what we call transpiration. So option B happens to be the only one, so you should go for option B. That's if you are not sure of the other one. So I already said that glutation is actually the process whereby the excess water, okay, in plants are excreted in form of water droplets of water. You can find them on the leaves. Okay, if it is excreted in form of water vapor, it is called transpiration. If the excess water is excreted in form of water droplets, it is called glutation. So the correct answer is option B. Now we are moving on to question number 23. When bacteria swim from cold to warm regions, this is known as what? We have negative chemotaxis, we have positive thermotaxis, we have positive phototaxis, we have negative photostaxis. Usually, let's look at the elimination method, okay? Now, we are talking about, before I'm going to explain the different terminologies. When bacteria swim from cold to warm, regions, cold to warm. When something has to do with cold to warm, it's talking about temperature, okay? And when we talk about temperature, the term that is usually used, of course, should be what? Thermo. When you hear thermo, that has to do with heat, temperature. The degree of coldness or hotness of a body is what we refer to as temperature, okay? So that is thermo, of course. Look at option A, says negative chemotaxis. Chemo came from the word chemicals, okay? Chemical. So chemotaxis is a form of directional movement of the cells, okay, where organisms begin to move towards or move away from chemicals, okay, maybe from plants or the surroundings, okay. So that is chemotaxis. So when we talk about negative, it is negative when they begin to move towards, okay, it becomes negative. They're moving away, it becomes positive, depending. You know, we have some organisms, we have some bacteria usually that love those chemicals, okay. So those ones that love the chemical, if they move towards the chemical, it could be a positive for them, okay. Then if they move away, it could be negative for them. So if it is those ones that hate, you know, the chemicals around, okay, it's a directional movement, like I said. If those ones that hate the chemical, if they move towards, it becomes what? Negative, because it's going to kill them, okay. Then if they move away, it's going to be positive for those ones. So depending on the nature of what bacteria, just like we have some microorganisms that can survive in very cold region, okay, and those ones that can what? Not contain. For instance, there are some microorganisms that when you put them, okay, if they are in a cold environment, they survive. In fact, they thrive more. Like some microorganisms, if you put them in, let's say you use a refrigerator, for instance, you store food there to preserve it, okay. Some microorganisms can be there. In fact, they will be enjoying and be saying, thank God you've given me that. Those organisms actually thrive more and they can survive in areas where there are cold temperature. And there are some that it is in the cold region, they are not active, they will not survive there. So your food can stay longer in that particular point. And then we have some organisms that are in the warm. In fact, there are some organisms, you know, you can boil. There are organisms that actually have temperatures that are even higher than what? Than the boiling point. At boiling point, you should expect that any organism in that point, any microorganism should not survive. But we have some microorganisms, it's interesting to know that even at temperatures above 100 degree boiling point, they are still in the water there, they are just enjoying themselves because of the way their cells are actually formed. So we could have organisms, you know, that are having, you know, that can move, maybe swim towards the cold or the warm regions, okay. They are actually referred to as what? Chemotaxis. It's a directional movement, okay. Positive, they move from cold to what? To warm regions for survival, okay, or for them to carry out their metabolic activity. We call it positive chemotaxis. It's a directional movement of the cells, okay. That's positive chemotaxis. Then to be negative if they are moving away. Then we have positive phototaxis. Of course, photo has to do with what? With light, okay. Light, when there's light, they move towards the light. Like we have some plants, when they bend towards it, okay, for sunlight or photosynthesis, we say that is what? Photo. Okay, so phototropic to that phototaxis, okay, it is positive, and then negative is what they are moving on away. It becomes negative phototaxis. So the correct answer here is option B, positive chemotaxis. Now let's move on to question number 24. Hydrostatic skeleton is the type of supporting system found in what? You know, we have three types of skeleton. We have the endoskeleton, okay, we have the exoskeleton, and then we have the hydrostatic skeleton, okay. So for the endoskeleton, we have like one we have in mammals, the bones, okay, the vertebrates, they are inside, okay. You can't see them outside. That is like we have in mammals. That's why we have the endoskeleton. The same is applicable with reptiles, okay. And then we have the arthropods. Arthropods usually they don't have the exoskeleton. Most of them they have the exoskeleton, okay, not the endo. They have arthropods, some of them, because their skeleton is in the outermost part, okay, that help them in causing that. So those are what they have, what the exoskeleton. The arthropods usually have them. So just like the arthropods have the exoskeleton and the mammals and reptiles have the endoskeleton, the oligochaetes also have the what? Hydrostatic skeleton, okay. The oligochaetes, just like we have the earthworm, okay. How does that happen? They have what we call the fluid-filled coelom. Coelom is spelled C-O-E-L-U-M. Okay, so they have the fluid-filled xylem, okay, that helps them, to retain, of course, like name implies, fluid-filled, that is filled with fluids, okay, that help them to do what? To movements by what? Contraction. The muscles, their muscles become contracted. As the muscles become contracted, okay, they can move, and then it takes the shape of that particular. So that kind of skeleton is not exoskeleton. It is different for it is what? The hydrostatic skeleton, like we can find it in the earthworm. So the correct answer here is option C. On to question number 25. We have a diagram here. Of course, this is the reproductive organ of male. Okay, that's the male reproductive organ. But that is not actually what the question is. So the question says, from the diagram above, the structure labeled high originates from the what? So the label I is what is this? So we don't have any business down here. So the business we have is just actually in this part. This is the what? That is the bladder. This is the bladder we have here. And then we have in the bladder, don't forget, that is where the urine is formed. We talked about ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption in the kidney, okay? Once the urine has been filtered, the blood has been filtered, the waste, which is in form of urine, eventually comes to the ureter, okay, and then moves straight up to the what? To the bladder. And in the bladder, that is where the urine is stored first, okay, before it is ejected out of the urethra, then out of the body as waste, as a excretory product. So this usually is what we call the ureter, U-R-E-T-E-R. That is ureter that is carrying the what? The blood, the urine, okay, into what? Into the bladder to be stored here. And don't forget, it is actually coming from where the ultrafiltration and reabsorption of the blood actually took place, which is where the kidney, that is where it took place. So the question says, from the diagram, the structure labeled I originates from where? Where is it coming from? This is the ureter coming from where? From no other organ but the kidney, not the liver, not the small intestine, not the stomach, but the kidney. So based on that, the correct answer is option B, kidney. I hope you enjoyed this content, just like I did solving those questions. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video.